Hey guys, today we have another car story, and this time about insurance fraud. By the way, I often get messages from viewers about similar cases where people deceive insurance companies, get payouts, and then sell the cars they bought at auction for scrap value. But in reality, there are many more cases like this. I'll tell you one, but trust me, the schemes can be quite different. You could make a whole series on this topic. Let's get started. Here in front of me is a Land Cruiser 200, and it's no coincidence. Recently, I received a letter from an employee of a large Kazakhstani insurance company. They told me about a recent wave of fraud in the country, with the main focus on Land Cruiser 200 and Lexus 570 vehicles. These cars became a real magnet for fraudsters. The Land Cruiser is a classic in criminal schemes. Fraudsters love them, especially in combination with insurance fraud. Cars like the Land Cruiser, Lexus, and other popular models often become the target of criminal activities. No matter how many insurance fraud schemes there are, they all generally fall into two main categories: theft and total loss. The essence of the scheme is usually like this. A person buys a new Land Cruiser, insures it, and then reports a theft a few months later. They go to the police, say they left the car near their house, and the next morning it's gone. The police start looking, and after a few days, someone from the neighborhood, a janitor, a woman with a dog, or a security guard, calls in and says there's a suspicious car in the area. The police arrive and find the car sitting on jack stands or pallets, partially disassembled, covered in plastic, or wrapped with tape. The condition is strange, right? But the most interesting part comes next. The police check the car and discover that the license plates are in place, there's no damage, and the identification plates are intact. However, the car is missing parts: seats, multimedia, airbags, and control units. Everything has been removed carefully and professionally, ensuring that the car fits the criteria for an insurance claim. Now here's where it gets interesting. Insurance company employees and independent experts start calculating the cost of repairs. And this is where the difference begins. The insurance company usually values the damage much lower, about 50% less than the independent expert. The expert can increase the estimate by 90%, and in the end, the total sum comes out to approximately the market value of the car. After that, the client decides what to do with the remaining car: take it and sell it for parts, or keep it. In most cases, people choose the latter because they can make money on the scraps. Getting 70 to 75% of the car's value, they take the money, and the final stage of the scheme begins. All the parts removed from the car are carefully reinstalled, and the car looks like new. Of course, it's a bit worn out after being disassembled, but externally, it's almost perfect. This car hits the market again, and interestingly, it often sells for full market price, because for most people, the appearance of the car and its features are all that matter. Most buyers don't think about the fact that the car might have been a total loss and that its restoration was involved in an entire criminal scheme. But even so, these cars aren't always easy to sell quickly. If the car was heavily disassembled or has obvious signs of damage, it may take longer to sell. But even in this case, when it is eventually bought, the new owner often has no idea that the car was once restored through fraud. For the buyer, the price is the most important thing. For those who decide to sell these cars, there's another scheme that allows them to avoid all the paperwork and insurance problems. After the car goes through an insurance payout and restoration, it can be sent abroad, for example to Belarus or Ukraine. There it can be re-registered and receive a clean history, with no mention that it was once damaged. So, a car that was once considered a total loss now ends up with clean documents and hits the market again. It may end up in a different region where its history isn't checked and can be sold for full price. But even such a scheme is not without risks. If the new owner gets into an accident or wants to sell the car, its history might still come to light. Insurance companies and law enforcement regularly update their databases, and one day this car will be caught in connection with a criminal case. Often, these cars are returned to the country where it's harder to hide their history. But that's not where the schemes end. Some fraudsters go further and use lawyers to help them properly handle the documents and bypass checks. Forging documents, altering VIN numbers, All of this is used to hide the true history of the vehicle. In general, insurance fraud schemes are hard to uncover. Fraudsters usually act within the boundaries of the law, forging documents and manipulating numbers. They may use intermediaries to help cover up the traces, creating fake reports and expert conclusions. So, if you're buying a car, don't rely on its appearance only. Always check its history to avoid unpleasant surprises. Remember that even if the car looks brand new, it might have a criminal history behind it. Before making a purchase, always use trusted services to help you find out if the car was ever in an accident or involved in fraud. No matter how hard you try to avoid such schemes, sometimes events unfold so quickly that you don't realize the consequences of your actions. You're already in the car, which at first glance seems perfect, and then after a while you start noticing strange signs. The malfunction indicator suddenly lights up, odd noises that didn't bother you before appear. At first you think it's just a minor issue, but then the situation starts to worsen. At some point, you realize that the repair costs are much higher than you expected. It's not just a lost wheel or wrong airbag. The car starts showing serious issues that weren't visible initially. You decide to consult with an independent expert, and here's where it gets interesting. The expert asks you strange questions like, "Are you sure this car hasn't been in an accident?" Or, "When was the last time the brakes were changed?" And that's when you get an uneasy feeling. Something's wrong with this car. After a few days, you get a report that literally shocks you. It turns out that your perfect car was once considered a total loss, and its documents were altered to hide its criminal past. And that's when you realize the entire purchase was based on fraud. And the most frustrating part is that at every stage of this process, you, as the buyer, are victims in some way. How did this happen? In fact, this isn't rare. We've seen cases where a car that went through an insurance company looks perfect and seems flawless, but its restoration was part of a fraudulent scheme. A car that was once in an accident and written off as a total loss, after restoration, looks like new. And its documents are clean, allowing the seller to sell the car at a profitable price. But even if you become a victim of such fraudsters, it's important to understand that there are legal ways to protect yourself. For example, if you find out that the car was in an accident or was restored after a crash, you can demand compensation through the court. However, this is a complex and lengthy process that will require all the necessary evidence and legal help. Fraudsters in this field use numerous methods to cover up their activities. They may forge documents, alter VIN numbers, or use old car dealerships that cover the sale. Therefore, if you see a car that looks perfectly prepared, don't rush into the purchase. Externally, the car may seem completely normal, but pay attention to small details, such as paint traces or strange scratches on the body. If these don't match the overall condition of the car, it could be the first sign that the car is hiding its history. It's also worth checking the condition of essential components, such as the engine, transmission, and brakes. If they look too fresh or clean, it could also be a result of the car being restored. To avoid falling into a trap, always use the services of experts who can conduct a full diagnostic. These specialists will check all the information about your car, help you uncover hidden damages, and determine whether the car has ever been restored or involved in an accident. This is especially important when buying expensive cars like Lexus or Land Cruiser, which are often the target of fraud. Another important detail is the car's history. Always check the documents related to the car. Fraudsters often forge documents to hide the car's past. It's especially important to ensure that the car's VIN number matches the number in the documents. If they don't match, that's a red flag. If you want to be sure of their choice, don't hesitate to spend a little more time checking the car. It's better to spend a couple of days and the few $100s on experts than to face much bigger losses later when it turns out the car was written off as a total loss. Another scheme worth mentioning is the resale of cars after restoration. These cars are often sent abroad, for example, to Belarus or Ukraine, where the vehicle history check is not as strict.
There, they can receive clean documents and re-enter the market. This allows fraudsters to sell a car that was once in an accident as if it were brand new. Some of these cars might even end up in countries where checking a car's history is much easier. There, they can be re-registered and sold as cars with a clean history, and you as the buyer may not even realize that the car has been restored. Of course, this process comes with risks, because when the car eventually enters a stricter inspection process, its true history may resurface. Then the new owners will be in trouble. If you decide to sell a car that was once restored through a fraudulent scheme, remember that there is a high risk that the buyer, even if they don't notice any issues at first glance, will encounter restrictions in the future. In this case, you may face legal consequences, and the sales process will be much more complicated. Even if the car passes all checks and looks flawless, its true history may resurface when the buyer attempts to sell it again or use it in a different context. Of course, this doesn't mean that all cars that have been restored after an accident or listed as total are necessarily linked to fraud. However, it's important to remember that buying such a car always carries risks, especially if the car's history has not been properly verified. In addition to the legal issues related to restored cars, there's another scheme that's increasingly being used by fraudsters, creating cars with fake histories that enter the market with new documents and registration. For example, these cars can be sent to other countries where history checks are not so strict and then resold as new. This allows fraudsters to bypass strict rules concerning cars with a criminal past. For those deciding to buy cars with questionable histories, there's one important piece of advice. Don't rely solely on the car's external condition. Even if it looks brand new, it doesn't mean it wasn't in an accident. Always check its history using official services that can verify all the information about its repairs, accidents, and other important aspects. You must always understand that buying a car is not just an investment in a vehicle, but also in your safety and financial well-being. If you've already bought a car and found out it was restored after an accident or has hidden defects, don't rush to act. Contact lawyers who can help protect your rights and demand compensation through the courts if necessary. You can also get additional expert reports that will confirm the car's condition and help prove it was part of a fraudulent scheme. Never rush into buying a car, even if it seems perfect and is priced in a way that feels like a good deal. Remember, the most important step in the buying process is thorough checking and understanding all the hidden aspects that may not be immediately visible. You need to be sure that you're not just buying a beautiful car, but a car with an honest history and free of criminal schemes.
This all points to the fact that if you want to avoid unpleasant situations when buying a car, it's important to use all available means to check its history. Don't just look at the external condition, but also at the details that may be hidden from sight. Even if the car seems new, don't forget that sometimes external perfection hides a whole series of manipulations and schemes. Here's another important point that many buyers often overlook: the car's VIN number check. It seems like a simple procedure, but in practice, many people don't think about this crucial step. The VIN number should be checked not only on the body of the car, but also in the documents and other parts of the vehicle, such as the engine or frame. If the numbers don't match or are found on different parts of the car, that's already a red flag. Fraudsters, of course, are well aware of this, so they may intentionally change VIN numbers or use fake documents to hide the car's real history. Checking the VIN number through official databases will help you find out if the car was stolen, if it's been in any major accidents, or if it's been involved in any fraudulent schemes. Some services allow you to obtain a detailed report about the car's past, including accident history and possible insurance claims. By the way, it's worth noting that such fraudulent cars are often sold at a lower price, and this is one of the main tricks that many buyers fall for. Why? Because when a car has a dubious history, its value drops. But since the buyer often doesn't know about the switch, they think it's just a great deal. However, if the car is priced significantly lower than its market value, it's a reason to be cautious and conduct a more thorough check. Remember, fraudsters not only work with fake documents and VIN numbers, but also manipulate the technical characteristics of the cars. Sometimes a car may look in good condition, but under the hood, there are serious problems that the seller won't tell you about. For example, engine or transmission damage that might not become apparent until some time after the purchase. This is also something you need to consider when inspecting a car. This is where a group of specialists, auto experts, comes in. They conduct diagnostics and assess the condition of the car at a deeper level. They won't just check general technical characteristics, but will also uncover hidden defects that may not be visible to the average buyer. Expert diagnostics before purchasing a car can be the step that saves you from unpleasant consequences. An interesting fact, even if you manage to find an authentic car with a transparent history and no signs of restoration, this doesn't guarantee that you're fully protected from fraud. Some schemes operate within legal boundaries, where the owners, without breaking the law, make small cosmetic changes to the car to increase its value. To avoid falling into such traps, it's important to always stay informed about current fraud schemes and look for every possible way to protect yourself. Before closing the deal, make sure to check the documents, request the car's history, and verify that all the information about the vehicle is accurate. And it's always better to buy a car through official dealerships or trusted platforms. While this isn't 100% protection from fraud, it does offer more guarantees that the car will have a clean history and the documents will be genuine. That's why it's important to remember that buying a car is not only a financial investment, but also a potential risk. Even if the car's appearance and characteristics seem perfect, hidden defects could end up being much more expensive. So always be cautious and check every aspect before making a purchase. Sometimes, to truly protect yourself, it's better to spend a little more time checking the car than to face unpleasant surprises later. Especially when it comes to expensive cars such as Lexus or Land Cruiser, even small issues can lead to significant repair costs. Every detail matters, and to avoid becoming a victim of fraudsters, you need to be attentive and act carefully. In today's world where fraud schemes are becoming more sophisticated, it's important to remember, no price is worth the risk that may hide behind buying a car with a questionable history. Share this video with your friends so they know how to protect themselves when buying a car. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow the new videos. I'll be sharing fresh stories and helpful tips to help you avoid fraud and protect your money. See you in the next video.